Hey, sports, fitness, and movie fans. Coach Frank here, and I have my producer,
Frank Sardella,
here today with me.
We got a special episode planned.
A very interesting story that happened to me just last week. This is one of the craziest stories, one of the craziest experiences that ever has happened in my life.
An almost tragedy that turned into a complete comedy.
That's right. And we'll get to that story right after this.
Game on, sports, fitness, and health fans, with another episode of the Sporting Good Posture Digital Radio Experience. Gear up for Coach Frank's advice from the sidelines as he helps you crush your game. No matter what sports, health, or fitness game you play.
Hey, this is Coach Frank. I'm sporting good posture. What are you sporting?
Hey, Coach, what do you got for us today?
Let's just see what he's got under the hood.
Welcome back to another episode of Sporting Good Posture. This is Coach Frank.
Yeah, and producer Frank Sardella. Funny episode today, Coach. Funny episode. Could have been a tragedy.
Yeah, when I called you last week and we were talking and I told you about what had happened to me, we immediately were saying that we had to get this on a podcast.
I insisted you tell this story. This story was just so funny to me. My only worry is that it's one of those you had to be there things, because I could not stop hysterically laughing as you were telling me the story, knowing, of course, you were totally safe and you didn't kill anybody. And after you showed me the video of the scene of the crime, which, by the way, I watched that video that you sent me, and you had gone across a walking path and everything.
Oh,
it's an absolute miracle that no one was around. So, folks, I should give the disclaimer here. We're not laughing, about the fact of the tragedy this could have been, but choosing to laugh about it retrospectively and looking back on the situation, because it was quite funny in that no one got hurt, and that it happened, thankfully, at a time of day when there was not
many people around. Really,
there wasn't anybody around, but it's so fit with our motif of like movie loving, and so fit with what the example you're about to give, the the Smokey and the Bandit movie that you just arbitrarily watched only days before the incident. And we're
not even days, minutes before.
Was it really?
It was literally minutes before. Which is probably why I survived this whole thing, because I had a little training in the back of my head right before all this happened.
Wow, that was unbelievable. And your girls were watching it with you, yeah?
Yeah, so especially my youngest, she loves the movie. We've been trying to watch a lot of old 80s movies, so that last week happened to be Smokey and the Bandit is what I chose. So.
That's a 70s movie, Frank. That's a 70s movie, Coach.
That's right. Yeah, the second one was the 80s. The first one was the 70s.
Yeah, so I saw it in the 70s. And so the
I wasn't even alive yet.
The movie, if anybody's wondering, is Smokey and the Bandit. And there was no Smokey involved, though. That was the only thing. There was just the Bandit, and you were actually the Bandit.
Yes.
Actually, you were a little bit of the Bandit, a little bit of Iceman. And to top it all off, I think we even squeezed a Back to the Future reference or two into this.
Yeah, we did.
That we can get into later, because at the end of all of it, I remember quoting a couple of things to you going, this is absolutely hilarious because of the following. But we should probably get into the story of what happened. And just to set it up, this is something that I really relate to, because I'm somebody who, in my vehicle, have a thing. Well, any vehicle I've ever owned, whenever the gas has gotten onto empty, and in more modern years, when you have the gas light that comes on just after you get a little below a quarter tank, or maybe to an eighth of a tank, and it's the warning light, I'm the king of running that thing for everything it's worth, never worrying about it, running the car impossibly past the last eighth of a tank, probably driving around, not even on fumes, but on my idea that I have gas in the tank. And having a wife who is the absolute opposite of that and freaks out before the light even comes on and has to pull into the nearest gas station. I think you're in a little bit of the same boat as I am. So I think the story starts out with how much gas was in the tank when you took off that day.
I usually push the limit a bit, but this definitely pushed it to the utmost, where the gas light was on probably for a couple of days, and whatever was going on, I just really wasn't paying attention to it. And I leave the house I dropped my daughter off at school, and we, like I was saying, we literally had just watched Smokey and the Bandit. We watched it the night before, and then we got up the next morning and eating breakfast, and my daughter was begging me to watch the end of it.
Oh,
so I turned it on in the morning while she's eating breakfast. So we're watching, a good 45 minutes of it till the end of the movie, right before I got to take her to school.
Oh, man.
So I drop her off at school, and now I'm driving to work. And what I do to go to work is I take some of these back roads through Brentwood because the typical main roads get backed up with traffic. So when I take the back roads, it's a little more hilly and there's not as much traffic. So I can know exactly about how long it's going to take me to get to work. So I don't have to worry about hoping that there's traffic or hoping there's no traffic and then get stuck in it when there is.
Definitely to your advantage in this particular situation as well.
Yeah. So as I'm driving, I go, I'm maybe like not even 10 minutes from my house, and it's hilly. So I'm going past, all the houses through the back roads here. There's a school there, and then I'm going up this hill. It's called Split Log Road, and I'm going up a hill now. So this is the more steepest part of where I'm going, and there's a traffic light at the top of the hill. And I get to about halfway up the steepest part of the hill, and my car stalls out, and I'm not quite to the traffic light. And I was looking, I was like, what's wrong with my car? And then I quickly realized, oh wow, I really was almost out of gas, or I am out of gas. So I put my foot on the brake and I start waving the people around me because I'm in the turning lane to go onto the next road. And now I'm blocking like at least 10 cars that are sitting behind me. So I'm waving for them to go. So they are obviously mad at me, which I would have been mad at me too if I got stuck.
Of course,
in the middle of the road.
Me also being a fellow New Yorker.
Yeah, fellow New Yorkers, we don't like to wait more than half a second.
Yeah, we're honking the horn when that light turns green.
So now I'm stopped. These people go by me, and then on this road, there's some islands. There's like 3 or 4 islands through the road there up this hill. So I look back and I'm like, well, I don't want to be blocking this whole lane if I am out of gas. So I let go of the brake just to roll back a little bit, just to get out of the way and be in the middle of the road in front of that island. And as I start going down the hill, I didn't know this, but I guess when you run out of gas, you lose power to your car.
Yeah, you kind of do.
You also lose power to your brakes.
Yep.
And I've never run out of gas before, so this was all new to me too. So I'm rolling back, and now I can't stop.
And you've also never probably driven a 70-something automobile and experienced what no power steering is.
No, that's right. My grandmother growing up, actually, we had a 1970 Dodge Dart Springer.
Oh, okay. All right. So you probably did experience it.
I only drove it maybe once.
Yeah. And
when
it's
I was
easy to
just
forget.
learning to drive.
Yeah, easy to
But
forget.
I know what you're talking about. So yeah, so you lose the power steering, you lose the brakes. So now I'm rolling backwards down the hill. So at first I'm like, all right, this isn't too bad. So I'm just rolling. I'm like, I'll figure out a way to stop. Yeah, famous last words, exactly. Now I'm rolling down the hill, and there's probably a good somewhere between a quarter mile and a half a mile between the bottom of the hill and the traffic light I was trying to turn at. So there's quite a bit of distance, and the road is windy. So now I'm going backwards down this road, and it's this pretty steep incline. So I actually took a video the other day. I definitely was going somewhere between 35 and 40 miles an hour down this road.
Wow.
So imagine going backwards
with no brakes, no steering.
No brakes, no power steering, and I had no idea what to do. So now I'm going down the hill and I'm gaining speed. So as I'm gaining speed and there's islands passing by, I'm going down the side there. So I'm going down the correct side of the road, but I'm going backwards. So the good thing was I wasn't going down the wrong side of the road going backwards, because I definitely would have nailed somebody. But I'm going down the correct side of the road, but I'm going backwards, and I cannot stop this car. I'm slamming on the brakes, and there's no power, there's nothing. So now I'm gaining speed.
So wait, you're going down the oncoming traffic lane, but backwards, so you're going in the correct direction.
That's right.
Okay, all right, now I got you. I didn't pick that up at first because I thought you were in the lane you were in, which would have...
Yeah, no, thank God.
Oh, man.
I got the car to go down the correct side of the road, but I'm going backwards.
Wow.
So at least because if I would have gone down the wrong side there,
you would have easily hit somebody.
I would have slammed somebody within the first 100 feet.
My goodness.
Because as I'm going down, I see people passing by me, some of them pulling over to get out of, to see, because they probably thought I was going to hit them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And I'm going down there, and I'm passing, the first island, I'm passing the second island, I'm passing more people driving on the other side of the road. Just I could see them quickly staring at me.
Oh my goodness.
And I have my left hand on the steering wheel. I got my right hand around the back of the front seat there, and I'm looking backwards. And the whole time I'm pumping the brakes, I'm hoping that at some point that this thing stops, but it's not stopping. And now I'm going down the hill, and it's getting windy. And
I still can't get over that.
It's now getting where it's hard to actually control the car because it's turning. There's neighborhoods that are open up there. There's turning lanes. And it gets windy. So now I'm going down the hill more. I'm passing neighborhoods, turns back around. I turn the car. I'm still in the correct lane. I didn't go over the island. I didn't hit anything. I'm still in this lane. So I'm going down more. I pass more islands and more cars. And now I'm getting down towards the bottom of the hill. And now it's do or die at this point, because I'm about to get to a bigger intersection. There's a traffic light there. There's a school there.
Oh man!
Thank God that the school was not in session yet, because the school doesn't go in until probably 8:45, and this is about 8:05, 8:10 in the morning.
Oh wow! So school was in session.
So at least this one was not. So it was an elementary school, so they don't go until later. So at least at this point, and it was raining that day. It was more drizzling, so there was really nobody walking at all. So there was nobody on the road sidewalks walking. The school wasn't in session at the crossing guard wasn't there. There was no kids walking around. So thank God that it was early enough where none of this was going on.
Okay.
And as I'm coming down the hill, now my car, because there's two windy turns there, now I'm starting to actually lose control of the car. And as I get towards the bottom there, I'm almost to the traffic light, and I'm about to cross this intersection. I end up whipping the car around to go forward. As I whip the car all the way around. I mean, this is literally a scene out of Smokey and the Bandit. When they drive backwards.
I'm hearing the theme music in my head, the banjo.
Literally, without stopping.
Down. Yeah.
Loaded up and trucking. Yeah, I'm trucking down this hill. I whip the car around, and it's one of those things where you don't even stop. It goes from backwards to forwards in one sweep. And now I'm going forwards, and I'm almost to the traffic light there. And when I turned it around, I mean, it was so fast, but there's a sidewalk and a curb there. My car jumps the curb, and I'm going now towards. There's woods there. There's a mini little brick wall that was probably an old wall that was built a long time ago. There's a creek.
Let's get the turn though in perspective before you go into we start getting into the ravine section of the story. Tell me what the degree of this turn was. Was it 180 degrees? Was it 270? Was it 130? How many degrees did you actually revert your direction?
So it was definitely a complete 180, and it might have been more than that, because
and it made the noise and everything, the screeching noise.
Yeah, it was like
wow.
This whole, I mean, it was literally like a scene out of a stunt movie, with cars driving fast like this. So I'm trying to remember. I think I turned. Because I had my left hand on the wheel. I think I turned it to the left quickly.
Yeah.
So it spun around, and then I think it was actually good. There was a little bit of slickness on the road, because
that
allowed for that turn to happen.
I'm sure that helped. There's no way you're that skilled of a stunt man. There's just no way.
I'm just trying to think here,
unless you're
how
me.
This thing turned around so quickly. So I spin the car, and it was definitely at least a 180.
Yeah.
If not a little bit more than that.
Wow.
And now I'm facing forward. The car jumps the curb, and there's sidewalk there, and then there's some grass, and then there's the wooded area with the brick wall, and then there's a huge creek behind it.
Okay.
I mean,
that's legit. I just want to know, first of all, are you drawing on any past experience? For instance, my first car, my uncle gave me a 1972 Cadillac Sedan DeVille my senior year in high school in the 80s. And I drove that thing during the winters and used to go to empty parking lots, including the school in the morning. I'd get there early just to do donuts in the parking lot on the days that it spun. So I was always good at handling cars and skids and stuff. Like, are you drawing on that kind of experience, or is this like a first time, like, flip around for you? No,
this is definitely, I've done, so I did that too. Like when I first got, my first car was my dad's old car after he passed away. It was a 1986 Chevy Celebrity station wagon.
Oh my God, a Chevy Celebrity.
So that was my first car. And before that, it was my brother-in-law's car, which they used in the Bronx to deliver appliances because they had an appliance store. And this thing was just beat to crap. He would either hit people with the car or people would hit him with the car. And they didn't care because it was such a beater that nobody cared. When I first got the car, the front right door was dented right where the door turns into the front quarter panel. I had to take a crowbar and pull the door back and basically do my own body work so the car door would actually open without it going like, and just absolutely like dust and metal would fly off and sparks would fly every time you open his door.
God, I miss the good old days. This sounds like my
to the point where this car there was no key for the trunk. So my key for the trunk was a long flat-headed screwdriver that I would stick into the keyhole.
The days of driving junkers. My friend Ross, when I worked at Caldor, if you remember Caldor in New York, for those of you who aren't from the Northeast, Caldor was like Target. It was an early version of Target. And in the Caldor parking lot, we used to do these laps on Friday night because there was a movie theater there. And my friend Ross used to drive these junkers, and he would play shopping cart demolition derby. He'd just ram shopping carts with it and didn't give a crap what happened to his car. Like, these old junkers, they were fun. We did a lot of crap in them. So anyway. All right. So we know what you're drawing
this was
on
actually, I had some experience between that car, so I would do donuts in that car. Then my second car was a 1984 Delta 88 and Oldsmobile Delta 88. And if anybody knows what this car is, this car was over 18 feet long. This was literally the first car we nicknamed it the Lexus because it was a joke because it was such a piece of crap. And I'm like, it's a Lexus. This is the best car I've had. It's a Lexus. And then the second car was this Delta 88, which was 18 feet long. We called it the boat because literally
we called my car the boat.
we could fit like 12 people in this car because it was so big. I mean, the front seat and the back seat was like extra wide, so you could fit everybody you needed to in this car. So driving those two cars, I had a lot of experience in the snow up north. So I would go, I'd do donuts like in parking lots and stuff when I was first driving and like purposely skid the car out and just screw around with the car. So I had some experience doing that. Plus, when I would drive a lot, I would drive back and forth to college, in Pennsylvania and Iowa. I would drive in the snow a lot. So I was used to skidding and dealing with bad weather and living up in Boston and New Hampshire and stuff. So there was quite a bit of experience with that. So I think that did help in this situation with all this. And I would drive backwards in parking lots for fun too, like just screwing around. So I do think that doing this stuff really did help in this situation because when it came time to turn, I was able to turn the car also without flipping it. Because typically, I'd never done it in an SUV. So typically, if you do this in an SUV, you're probably going to flip the SUV. So I'm lucky I didn't flip this because I have a Nissan Murano. So this is the car I have now. Yeah. And I'm lucky it didn't flip.
Yeah.
And so I definitely, honed in on my previous skills of screwing around for 20 years, driving garbage cars that would have got handed down to me.
would have been nice to have the wheelbase and the length of a junker at that point, and the height as well, because that low height of the sedans definitely. Yeah, you got a really great point with SUVs. I didn't even think about that, but they can flip so easily. The reason why you don't see any Isuzu Troopers on the road anymore, they were like the tallest car going and all they did was flip.
Yeah.
It's just like,
exactly.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
At least the Nissan Murano is not, because you have a Rogue, right? So at least
I have
the
a
Nissan Murano
Rogue,
and the Rogues, they're not like huge SUVs, so they're a little bit more
and they're
lower to the ground.
they have a low center of gravity on them. Like all the weight is in the bottom of it, and the top isn't really weighty at all. So you were lucky with that.
Yeah. So I've now gone 180. I've turned the car around, so I've jumped the curb, and now first wheel goes over the curb. Now the second, the right front wheel goes over the left front goes over. Now I'm driving on top of the sidewalk, headed onto the grassy area before the woods and the brick wall.
And you're still not stopped yet. You're still in motion.
I'm not stopped yet, and I'm still going
it.
over 30 miles an hour. So this is not, nothing is slowed down because the car whipped around and never lost any speed, jumped the curb, and then now I get onto the grass and it's wet. Now I know I'm about to go into the creek, into Margella Ravine, like we were joking about.
Yeah, I was saying that was my first thought. You were like, because you used the word ravine when you were telling me the story, and I was hysterically laughing. You said there was this ravine there, and you didn't even realize what you were saying. And all I'm thinking of is Back to the Future 3. And Eastwood Ravine, and I'm thinking, wow, is he going to drive by there tomorrow and it says Margella Ravine on it? That was the best.
It almost did, man.
So okay,
it almost did.
So you're up on the grass. You're at the tree line of the woods, and there's a ravine behind it. Is the picture I get from the way you described it to me.
Yeah, and there's a huge creek back there, and there's it drops into the creek too. And I don't know how far the drop is, but I would have dropped.
You would have dropped
had I gone over the side of this thing.
Literally been up the creek.
Up the creek without a paddle. That's for sure.
Yeah. So
I finally, now I'm using all my strength and going back to the Dodge Dart Swinger that I had driven 25, 30 years ago with no power steering. I am pulling to the left as hard as I could so that I don't go into the creek and over the ravine there. And the other thing that's now coming up on me is there's a traffic light there with a huge pole, because it's one of those that go into the sidewalk and then go across over the middle of the street where it hangs down. And there's a crosswalk sign there as well. I mean, I'm barreling into this. I'm about 10, 15 feet away.
And you're thinking you're going to, you're thinking you're going to,
I might hit this pole.
Yeah. You're thinking you're going to hit the pole at that moment.
So I curved the car back. So now I've kind of gained control, because I'm not going to go into the creek and over the ravine there. Now I'm barreling towards this traffic light pole and the crosswalk pole. I end up going around it. So basically around the back side of it, where it's a four-way intersection at this point.
Oh man.
And I cross over the sidewalk on the back side of it, and I turn now the car to the left, because there's actually people sitting there at the light ready to go. And that's the other thing. If I had gone further, I could have gone through this light as the light changed, and who knows if somebody would have nailed me or if I would have hit them as I'm going through the intersection, going backwards or something.
Could have been. Good thing you were as in control as you were. And what's the time lapse at this point? Give me a time lapse. Like what is it, like 30 seconds from the top of the hill where this started to where we are in the story now?
So I timed this,
because it feels like 5
this is
minutes.
Now about 90. This is about 90 seconds, because I actually timed this thing the other day. I took my car to where the traffic light is, and I let it glide down the hill, and I timed it. It's about 90 seconds from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. So this is think about driving, imagine driving backwards 35, 40 miles an hour for 90 seconds on a windy hill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane to think about how, like, normally we drive backwards for a few seconds. Imagine 90 seconds. And normally we're going, 3 to 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
This is like
for sure
speeding down the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I brought up the example, if you remember, the movie Jack Reacher, the first Jack Reacher movie with Tom Cruise. In the end of the movie, where he was confronting the criminals, and he had the attorney who was on his side, at like her car, and he was using her backup camera and crouching around to drive into an area where they all had machine guns and whatever, and he's got the accelerator floored and he's driving backwards. So that's the only thing I could think of to compare it to, is like you're picking up speed, so you were probably going like max, reverse speed. No, probably faster, because if you were actually in reverse, the gear would actually slow it down to whatever the accelerator was, giving it power for. So you're freewheeling at this point.
So I was in neutral. So it just,
acceleration due to
the
gravity,
momentum of the hill,
the whole thing.
It flew down that hill.
Wow. So, but only 90 seconds have elapsed here, because we're into like 20 minutes of story so far to tell it, and it must have seemed like an eternity when you were doing this.
It did. I was sitting there, and as I'm doing this, I'm like, how am I gonna?
Yeah.
When I realized like I couldn't stop this car, I was like, how am I gonna stop this car? How am I gonna not crash into somebody? As I'm going backwards, and I'm just looking straight out the back and just making sure that I'm not weaving the car, because I knew if I pulled either way too much, I would definitely either flip the car or completely fishtail it and crash.
Yeah.
And so as I get to the bottom and I go around the traffic light, then I pull the car across and I end up right in front of where the school is, where like the entrance to the school is, because now it's finally flat ground. So I was finally able to just actually stop the car at this point. And now there's people around me, because some of them were at the light waiting for the light. Some of them were driving and then stopped and saw this going on. So they, like, one lady stopped to ask me if I was okay, and then called the police, because I told her, I was like, man, I'm out of gas, and I didn't realize my car would lose power like this, and it went all the way down the hill. And then I had some other people just asking me if I was okay, and then so now I'm blocking the school. So I jump out of the car and I'm pushing the car.
Oh my God.
As I'm pushing the car and driving it to get out of the way of everybody, so that I could move the car and not block the whole traffic. So I pushed the car across the street into the turning lane, so I wouldn't really block as many people over there. And I finally like get in the car, and I'm sitting there, and the lady had called the police, and I'm sitting there just, I'm now realizing like what happened. And what's crazy is like, you got the adrenaline rush going on here from this whole thing happening.
Yeah.
And I'm not even realizing at this point that I actually was able to stop, and all the things that happened on that 90 seconds down this hill, and that nobody got hurt. I didn't crash into anything. And then now I'm sitting there.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling
and I'm
me
like, man,
it's 8:25? Precisely. Damn, I'm late for school.
I'm going to be late for work.
First of all,
I got to go see patients here.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about like what, car accident cases. We were talking about that. Like this is a prime example, because actually
the irony,
as I'm sitting there, it starts coming onto me. Like I'm hurting now. Like actually I gave myself some whiplash from whipping the car around and then like pulling with all my might to not, go over to the ravine there into the creek. And my shoulders are hurting me, my neck's hurting me, my back's hurting me. And that's not even and nobody hit me, and I didn't hit anything. So, we see a lot of car accidents in the office. So I'm thinking, wow, this is actually some whiplash.
Yeah.
Without even getting into an accident, you can get whiplash just by losing control of your car.
Definitely crazy. And despite all of that, all you can think of is Smokey and the Bandit.
And as I'm sitting there,
that's
sitting
the thing.
Street.
You still got to get to work. You still got patients to take care of. You're hurting.
Yeah.
You're hurting. You had a scary experience. You're sitting there going, thank God nobody was around. And, there was a school involved, and thank God nothing happened. It could have been a lot worse. And the one thing you think of to do is to call me and tell me the Smoking and Bandit story on the phone version of this.
I was
thinking,
I have got to tell Frank what just happened, because this is insane.
I was like the first person you called. You didn't even tell your wife till the end of the day.
No, I didn't even tell my wife. She would have freaked.
Yeah.
She would have freaked. She's a teacher,
respectful.
so she's at school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I call her, she's going to freak out.
You can't call the wife.
Or she's going to be worried about me the whole day.
Well, especially you weren't injured or anything, so it wasn't necessary to call her at that point. But I agree with that move. That was definitely good. But it was the right move to call me. And all I can remember is how hysterically I was laughing while you were telling me the story. I just thought it was the funniest thing I ever heard, especially with the Smoking the Bandit stuff. And I share that with my pop. He's like one of his all-time, he's an old-time Jackie Gleason fan, but one of his all-time favorite movies is Smoking the Bandit. And he just loves Jackie Gleason as Buford T. Justice and the whole thing. And it was just such, they were just such funny movies. But then on top of it, to say you just exposed your daughters to that movie, and literally minutes before the incident. So is the banjo music playing in your head this whole time? Are you hearing Eastbound and Down in your head, or was it not until after when that hit you?
Well, you know what's funny too? I don't even know if I told you this part. As we're in the car, my daughter wanted to hear the songs from the movie, so I'm playing music from the movie. So this music was playing in the car while I'm driving backwards down the hill. The Smokey and the Bandit theme is playing in the car.
That's hilarious. That is that is the epitome of this situation, and everything that occurs with you. It just amazes me. The stories.
And I was telling you too, the opening song when Smokey and the Bandit, the first one comes on, is it's called "The Legend of the Bandit," and that song it's like literally I lived that song that day, because when they play the song and they talk about the Bandit got famous because his truck jackknifed and he was going completely backwards down the hill when his brakes didn't work.
Yeah.
And somehow he kept the truck under control, got it to the bottom of the hill without hitting anybody or hurting anybody, and was able to get the truck under control.
Did you?
I'm like, this is literally what happened to me.
I want to know, did you give a Burt Reynolds laugh at the end of this? That ha ha ha.
Yeah.
We got to get you a cowboy hat for sure. And I think you got to grow a mustache.
Thinking back,
you got to.
We've talked about a lot of these things that I've watched. So think about this. All my favorite shows when I was growing up as a kid: Knight Rider, Dukes of Hazzard, Smokey and the Bandit, A-Team. I mean, everything that you can, all the things that where you're driving fast cars and crashing and stuff,
vehicular shenanigans. All those TV shows and movies, they were part of you. Definitely part of me. And by the way, going inch for inch here and foot for foot, your Delta 88, according to this, was 200 inches, which is about 17 feet. My Sedan DeVille was about 7 inches longer at 18 feet.
Oh, wow.
So we both cut our teeth on cars that were almost 18 feet long. That's pretty wild. And I'll bet this would have been a different story if you were in one of those. You probably would have handled it like a champ in a car like that. Yeah, for sure. You probably would have done the Dukes of Hazzard jump. And,
landed it.
And too bad you didn't have the little Dixie horn, going on and be like,
oh man.
But I could hear you doing the Burt Reynolds laugh for sure. I think you need to grow the stash and get yourself a cowboy hat for this.
That may be my next Halloween costume is the Bandit.
You might have to even buy yourself a midlife crisis 70-something Trans Am.
Trans Am.
For sure. Or was a Trans Am or a Firebird? It was Trans Am, right?
I think it was a Trans Am.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as we're watching the movie, my daughter's like, Dad, do they not have seatbelts in this car?
Yeah, I know they do.
I'm like, I don't really think they had many seatbelts back then. I said they only maybe had the
lap strap, and no, cars had seatbelts. It's just nobody used them because
nobody used them.
Yeah, because
so they probably had it and they just didn't use it. Yeah,
there was no law. They in fact they made the law just before I got my driver's license. So I was kind of upset when I got my learner's permit and I had to start wearing a safety belt because I didn't grow up on them. And we never had any problems with it. But anyway, this is not to disagree with that, but what a story that you ended up getting out of this. I mean, you were definitely blessed not to have hurt anybody and been hurt yourself, although it sounds like you got a little banged up in the process, but man, it had to be worth it for the storytelling.
It was well worth it.
And the parallels.
Well, yeah, picking of all the movies to pick, the night before and that morning was Smokey and the Bandit, and to be listening to the soundtrack in the car on the way to school and then to work, and then this happened while the songs are on. I mean, it was like a movie script at this point.
Forget about it. And all I could think about was Eastwood Ravine in Back to the Future Eastwood 3. Ravine. And I think that's what I asked you. After you got done telling me the story, I was like, Frank, when you drove by there, a few hours later, was there a sign that said Margella Ravine? And I just thought that was pretty funny. There were many references. I even think we thought of a few Seinfeld references as well out of that.
Well, yeah, because you talked about how you like to push the limits of the gas, and I called you Cosmo Kramer because of that episode where he went to the rental, the new car place, and he said he had to drive the car, do all his errands, and then see how far the gas would go in the car.
That's right.
With the guy, with the worker.
I'm Cosmo. I'm Cosmo, for sure. I definitely am. And you didn't have anybody in the front seat where you had to do the move with, which was another episode of Seinfeld. But we're going to talk about the move and Seinfeld in our next season. That will most probably be a Seinfeld-themed season. I think we're having too much fun with the Back to the Future season right now. This has been my favorite season, I have to be honest with you, out of all of them. Cobra Kai was fun, and I know it was kind of your thing, and then there was the Punisher theme season before that, and that was kind of cool because we're both into Marvel and, that stuff. But Back to the Future is just a lot of fun in the cinema, and this is just kind of a sidestep from it, Smokey and the Bandit, but I somehow found a way to tie in a few Back to the Future references. In fact, I think I even referenced when in the first movie where he went back to 1955 and he falls out of the tree and rescues his dad. His dad falls out of the tree about to get hit by the car that made him and his mother meet, and then he pushes his dad out of the way to save his life, and he gets hit. And the father's like, I hit another one of these kids got in front of my car. Another one of these kids got in front of my car. And I was
this guy's hitting kids every week in his car.
I know, exactly. And here you are. Again, not to make light of the fact that what could have been out of this, but what fun it is to look back on and be able to laugh about it. But any lessons learned? First of all, are you still banged up from the whiplash? This was only less than a week ago that this happened. So
So what I did then is I was able, as I got to the bottom of the hill there, and then the cop came. He's like, "Hey, you really need to move your car. We can't have you blocking the turning lane." And I said to him, I was like, I'm out of gas. I don't think I can move the car. I said, and it's hard to even turn it because there's no power steering. And he's like, well, see if it starts up. So as I'm sitting there, I go to start the car and the car starts right up.
Yeah. Well,
I'm like, now this guy probably thinks I'm lying because I was telling him how I went all the way down the hill and all this stuff happened. And then I'm out of gas and the car starts right up.
Likely story.
Now I'm like, oh God, this guy's probably, I'll be in handcuffs before the end of the day here.
Exactly.
Junior, you have the right to remain silent.
But then actually it's pretty clear that you were sitting on a pretty steep incline. So that gas kind of drifted to a part of the tank where it wasn't getting picked up by the engine because it was sufficiently low. So when you were on level ground again, it was able to draw gas from the tank.
So I guess I can officially say I never actually ran out of gas because I was able to drive the car to a gas station. So I didn't have to have somebody bring me a gas can.
Which might be the most hilarious.
I can say that I almost ran out of gas. But I definitely... I've learned my lesson not to push the car that far because that was beyond scary.
Well, that teaches me a lesson too. I mean, I live in Florida where it's relatively flat, so there's no steep inclines here, but you never know when you're going to find yourself in a situation like that. So that's a lesson to me too, to think about and go, okay, maybe I'm the king of pushing the car beyond its limits and actually doing these miracle drives where, like I said, like the gas light will come on and I'll drive my car all the way to Atlanta. Like that's totally my mental attitude. Like I just have no consideration that the car is ever going to run out of gas, and it never does. So it's like literally the car somehow runs on my idea that it has gas. But now you've shown me a scenario in which it could remotely be possible where gas gets out of the reach of the engine, but there still is gas in there, thus proving me right. So I feel like your experience proves my theory right. About the fact that there's still a lot of gas in the tank when that light comes on. And when it goes down to empty, whether you're... So
that's what you learned out of this, is that I can still push this tank even further.
Yes, absolutely. And I got some hilarious comedic, reminiscent, reminiscent nostalgia of Smokey and the Bandit, which was definitely a staple of growing up in my household, and especially with my pops being such a big fan of Jackie Gleason and Sheriff Buford T. Justice. I just think that's outstanding. So what did you do about did you have to go to your chiropractor? Did you have to get treated? What did you do? You did a little laser therapy on yourself? What did you do? Like how'd you clean it up?
When I got to work, and it took me like a good 4 hours to kind of calm down from. It felt like I just played a football game.
Well, yeah,
the adrenaline was through the roof. I was
just going to say the adrenaline was probably like really high, so you probably weren't even feeling the maximum pain.
No,
at that point.
And so it's funny because it was good because I have people come in a lot with car accidents, and this wasn't a car accident, but man, the car whipped me around a lot. So I had a ton of pain, like in my shoulders and my neck and the left side of my back, because the way I pulled the wheel to the left really strained all those muscles. So when I got to the office, I was seeing patients, and then in between seeing patients, I started getting laser work. I did some laser on myself. I had the staff do some laser on like my neck, my back, my shoulder. I got adjusted that day. I did some more laser. So I did, and then since then, I've been adjusted a few times. But it's amazing because that's not even a car accident, and I had that much
that's a really
tightness
really
and pain going on.
Yeah,
not extreme, but enough where it was annoying. And then I have some people come in that have been, in full on car accidents or bad ones, or sometimes are in one and then don't get any treatment for a month or 2 months or several months. And I'm thinking, wow, you had to have been in pain, because I'm not even in a car accident, and I'm sore from just pulling the wheel and really just tightening up to make sure that I didn't, go into the ravine there. But I was able to do some work on that over the last few days, and then I'm feeling a lot better now because, but yeah, it's definitely, and it was Easter this weekend, so that was definitely my Easter miracle right there. Like that was my
yeah, for sure. That was miracle. Outstanding. And my miracle is the fact that I would never, ever know about this story had I not been in a car accident way back in 1994. Because that's what put me on the path to chiropractic. I ended up happening in a chiropractic office after months and months and months of my health going south and not connecting it to a car accident that I had. So it was a car accident that set me off in the industry. Advocating chiropractic, going out and lecturing on it, podcasting about it, and helping people like you develop shows and actually get the word out to the community. Had that not happened to me, A, I wouldn't even know you, and B, of course, I never would have heard this story, which would have been a total disappointment because, but you make good points about that. I mean, my initial experience having been a car accident, I can tell you that I have been in minor ones and more major ones. Because I've had more than one. I've had probably 3 or 4 significant car accidents, but even like one of them that was getting hit from behind while sitting dead stop at a traffic light didn't even seem that bad. But then the effects, like 12 hours later, then 24 hours later, thankfully I was already under chiropractic care and was able to just get right on it. But how many people don't? And even when you're in a situation like that, and it might not have even been in the car, you whip the body around in an emergency situation, even if you were jumping off a curb trying to get out of the way of an oncoming bus. Sometimes you just yank your body in a way that it wasn't prepared to be yanked, and you weren't prepared for it. And the muscles respond in a certain way. And then you don't do anything immediately necessarily because the adrenaline's pumping, and that's one of the things that your body goes into emergency mode, and it actually sets you up to get away from danger. And that's including your adrenals don't just pump adrenaline, they pump cortisol, which is actually there to help keep the inflammation at bay so that you can, get away from the tiger that's chasing you or whatever the human body was designed for. So, but once that all calms down, it's a freaking train wreck sometimes. So,
well, yeah. And just, what it reminded me too, like, when you just say you're walking in snow and you hit a patch of ice and you almost slip, but you don't, you catch yourself.
Yes, that's it. That's what I was trying to think of.
That hurts sometimes more than actually falling.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you almost slip in the shower and you catch yourself and, all of a sudden you pulled a muscle in your, or you pulled a hammy or something. Yeah. It's always something stupid, right? Like it
is. It happens a lot.
It's common, right? You see people like, with a crutch or their leg in a boot or something, and then you ask them what happened, or they were on a ski weekend and you go, oh, you were doing a double black diamond. They're like, actually, no, I was just walking out of the lobby and trying to get to the chairlift. And I slipped on the step. It's always something stupid. It's never anything spectacular. And story worthy, let's say, so much as your story. And that's why I insisted that you tell the story here. I'm like, Coach, I know that your patient base and all your listeners and actually the entire Nashville community is going to need to hear this story. Laugh together with us on it because it does have some comedy value, but also take a few lessons away from it as well. And and I think we all learned something about gas in our tank here too. That's a little bit of a takeaway on this. Like, hey, look at the danger that could lie ahead just from you saying, oh, it's inconvenient, or I'll take care of it later. I don't feel like stopping right now. You could end up in a situation like this, and obviously the damage could have been a lot worse. I'm even thinking me, like when I push the gas, I don't do it often anymore because I try to keep the tank full because the way gas prices shoot up at any minute, I'm like, oh, I better fill it.
Get a good deal on it.
Yeah, exactly. But when my gas goes down that far, sometimes it's literally like I'm on my way home and I'm like, dude, I don't feel like stopping right now. Like I just need to go home. I'll do it in the morning, and it's like you put it off. And actually you could be causing someone else danger. Not to mention the damage you could do to yourself, but glad that you're okay, Coach, but I have to tell you this story. I still laugh over it every time you bring it up and we talk, just because it's just the irony of it, and just that you couldn't write a better movie scene. Like, this is better than some movie scenes that I've seen. This is almost better than Ace Ventura skidding perfect 180 into a parallel park in sort of a sidewalk parking spot and going like a glove.
Like a glove.
I mean, it's almost better than that.
It felt a lot like that. And, it also goes to show too, like, get some gas, because I didn't know this. You lose power to your car. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea you lose brake power and power steering. Like, you're basically you have a 2,000 pound wrecking ball now that you can't stop.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. And then 2, definitely get checked out. Even if you don't get into the car accident, even if you just almost slip and not even fall, but just that motion of stopping yourself from falling is almost as bad as the fall itself.
Yeah.
Or, a lot of people play sports now and they might dive for a ball, or they might, or if it's a contact sport, they might get hit. And it's worth getting checked out, because even, like I said, me not even getting into the wreck, just the motions of turning the car and pulling it and making sure I didn't crash was enough to make me sore and give me some whiplash.
Yeah, for sure.
And, it's definitely worth at least getting checked out, because it could linger then. Or if you actually get in a major wreck, a lot of people will walk away from that and not feel as much pain right away, because you got the adrenaline rush. And sometimes there's a delayed effect with that pain, but just know internally it is doing damage. And if you've been in multiple car wrecks over the years, if you played sports, you've been hit before, you have a lot of pre-existing damage. And now that wreck will definitely just make it go over the edge. You're going to end up getting hurt. You're going to end up having pain at some point. So it's worth getting it looked at.
And they just accumulate and overlap over the years. They don't go away.
Yeah.
They just layer on top of one another, and you just compound the problem. And then you have problems down the road that you don't relate to that. That actually happened to me within months of my car accident. Right after the car accident, it was like, all right, I had a neck brace on for a little bit and whatever. I took whatever they told me to take at the hospital, those two things. They give you an anti-inflammatory and a muscle relaxer.
Pills or something,
Yeah, and they give you those 2 things. I took them like the first day, and then I just bore the pain and wore a neck brace for like 2 days after that, or 3 days. And then I was like, oh, I'm fine, because I didn't feel like immediate pain or discomfort. And then over the months, and I also didn't realize it was accumulated already on top of everything that had happened to me up until that moment: falls, slips, little bangs, bumps, accidents, that kind of thing. And about 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, I've got all these health issues going on that I didn't necessarily connect to the car accident. And meanwhile, the structure of my body is totally off, and it's not conducive to the body running properly. So it's been breaking down over the last few months until I finally feel it months later and don't think of the car accident. It wasn't until I went to the chiropractor that I was able to connect the two. And then after about a month or so of therapy, because I was in pretty severe shape, I was able to get back to battery. And, I think a lot of people should come to you and they should get checked out, whether they've been in a recent car accident or if their car accident was as much as a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or if they've had multiple or any accumulation of injuries. They should be getting in touch with you to not to get treated or healed, but just to get checked out to find out what causes caused what effects and how all that stuff relates to what's going on now. That's what they should do. How should they do that, Frank, if they're in the Nashville area?
So you can reach out to me on Instagram and Facebook at Ideal Health Wellness Center, and you can DM me on Instagram or Facebook, and I can answer any questions that you have. Yeah. And then also, if you want to give me a call at the office, it's 615-567-6683. Yeah. And like I said, we have a lot of car accident cases come in. We have digital x-rays on site, so we could take an x-ray and see if there is damage in there for pre-existing car accidents or the new one. Yeah. And then also we have laser treatments, which I think is one of the best things for whiplash and muscle aches and ligament damage is the laser. So that was the first thing I did is I lasered myself and I felt so much better from doing that. And then I got adjusted, like I said, a number of times over the last week. And Coach
can help you sport good posture, that's really the way. And actually, since I'm going to be promoting this episode on channels as well, if you're outside the Nashville area significantly, far away from Nashville, and you happen to hear this, you can always follow me at The Wellness Broadcast on Instagram as well. And if you have a question, you can still ask Coach Frank. You should definitely DM him on Instagram or whatever. But if you happen to be outside of the Nashville area and you need help finding similar help to Coach, in your area, I'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction. So you can always follow me on Instagram at The Wellness Broadcast, and you can just send me a direct message there, and I'll be more than happy to answer up to you and have a chat with you or what have you, and find out what you need, and I'll get you hooked up with the right person. So, but in Nashville, you should definitely call Coach Frank. I can tell you that. I've been treated by him. Every time I'm in town in Nashville and spend any amount of time at his office, I always make sure he treats me. And he's definitely on my top 10 list. I've been working with chiropractors at this taping, I think this is 28 years this year. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been quite a wild ride, and I've been treated by the best of them. And literally have worked with hundreds and have been treated by, let's say, dozens or scores of chiropractors as well. Well, Coach, I thank you for the story and allowing me to participate as well, sharing it with me enough where I was like, okay, I'm putting my producer hat on. We're doing a show on this. This is totally, it was a great break from what we've been doing, and a little comic relief and a little message in it too. So I think that's awesome.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. And it's been great talking to you. I'm glad we got to share the story, and I'm glad that I'm okay, and I'm glad that nobody else was hurt either.
Yeah, and people should remember the coach's door is always open.
That's right. The coach's door is always open, especially when I'm watching Smokey and the Bandit.
That's right, especially when you're watching, or Back to the Future for that matter, or any of the other shenanigans we find ourselves in. So, yeah. All right, I think you can do the sign-off, Coach.
This is Coach Frank. I'm sporting good posture and practicing my stunt driving. How about you?
I am too. I'm sporting good posture too and sporting stunt driving. I'm with you on that.
The Sporting Good Posture Podcast is a broadcast wellness production powered by Ideal Health Wellness Center. All content copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Executive producer Frank Sardella. Coach Frank appears courtesy of Ideal Health Wellness Center in Franklin. For more information, visit sportinggoodposture.com and follow Coach on Instagram at sportinggoodposture.
Hello, officer. Glad you're here to assist me. My name is Sheriff Buford T. Justice. I have just apprehended the bandit.
No, sir. You just apprehended my captain.
Take the cuffs off, Junior.
What's our sign-off?
Well, you know what your sign-off is, don't you? I mean, we do this every time. You already said your door is always open, so... Are you serious? You don't freaking know your sign-off?
I think I had some head injuries from this whiplash.
I think so.